So we are here in London for the 2017 Para-Athletics, and I'm here with a superhuman. Who are you?
My name is Liam Malone. I am 3/4 biological human being and then I am 1/4 artificial human being. So I was born with a bilateral absence of the fibula bone. At 18 months old, they amputated both my legs from below the knee. And I was given artificial legs, and so that's who I am. And I'm the world #1 blade runner. I'm currently out of the world championships due to injury, and I'll become the fastest person on the planet.
Tell us about the plans to become the fastest person on the planet.
Sure. So it comes from a broader worldview that the future of future of consciousness and the future of the body will be artificial, and every sort of point that you look to around technology and its interaction with the human body points that it will become artificial. So from prosthetic limbs to people wearing glasses, which is essentially like an artificial eye, or contact lenses, to hearing aids, to heart transplants. That in like 200 to 600 years time, we'll have entirely artificial bodies. Like that's especially if we live on other planets. And so my small role in participating in that change will be using artificial limbs to become the fastest person to run 100 meters. Now that might sound like a difficult task if you were a normal mere human being with mere human being legs, but when you have technology that you can innovate on, it becomes much more likely. So I have 1.3 seconds between Usain Bolt's world record time and my personal best. And but I can achieve, I can decrease time by an order of magnitude through simple innovations like increasing and decreasing the thickness of the carbon fiber, reducing its drag as you know from the wind, and by changing its shape. So there's a lot that I can do that then also influences my body and makes adaptations to my body at the same time. And so that's what I'm working on for the next 3 years.
And who are you working with on this?
Can't share that part yet. Yeah, that bit's...
Has it been confirmed?
It's been confirmed, but I can't... It's not confirmed publicly. Yeah.
Is that because you don't want other athletes?
No, not at all. It's just a little bit sensitive at the moment on the people that I'm working with.
So would you say you're a transhumanist?
Yes, 100%. Yeah, sure. I mean, like I just said, the future, like intelligence is going artificial. We know that. People like Elon Musk are saying that's an existential risk, and he's working so that we become symbiotic with artificial intelligence, so that our brain and artificial intelligence sort of computing powers sort of connect, and that we have access to that, because if we don't, then we're going to become extinct. And so, yeah, I mean, I think the role of technology and the role of human beings is to build technology that allows us to increase our self-awareness, and that basically we're the universe experiencing itself, and we're trying to become more self-aware, and the way to do that is by basically allowing ourselves to live forever.
So that was going to be my next question. So you would be interested, if somebody gave you the opportunity to live forever, would you go that far?
Yeah, sure. It just depends what I'm confined to, like what sort of body I'm confined to, what sort of value of life I have. Like, I wouldn't want to be a human being forever. I think that would be dreadful. But I think if you had the opportunity to download your consciousness into different forms and go to different planets and understand different things, and who knows, there might be multiple universes, which none of us we really know for sure, but I would certainly want to live for more than 100 years.
And have you considered being cryogenically preserved?
No, I just don't think that works.
You don't think that's likely to be the future of this movement?
No, just because I don't think the biological body's going to last much longer. Like, I think it's much easier to just replace. Our bodies are very complex. When I was born, it was much easier to just chop my legs off than try and reshape them, redefine them, whatever. because it's just so complex. It's just easier to chop it off and replace it with something that's artificial. And so it just makes more sense if we want to live forever to build alternative vehicles basically to hold our consciousness in, instead of trying to like keep these bodies, sort of stop them from decaying and preserving them over time. It doesn't make any sense.
So in this day and age, so let's say over the next 50 years, do you think there's going to be an increase in people who are considered to be able-bodied? I know you don't like the terms disability, able-bodied, but do you think that there's going to be an increase in, for want of a better word, able-bodied people getting enhancements? For instance, you know, we now have replacement knees, replacement hips. Do you think there's going to be much more of that in the near future?
Sure, yes, and I mean it's going to go both ways. I mean, the biggest enhancement that every single human has had has been the phone and the internet. I mean, that's basically given us superpowers. We have access to more information in our hands than the president did 30 years ago. So that's the biggest increase. But also, I think in the near future, you're going to have people that are chopping off their limbs and replacing them with artificial limbs by choice. Not because there's anything wrong with their current body, but I think that artificial bodies in the next 50 to 100 years will be considered really attractive. And because you can mold your body to look however you want, I would imagine that'll be, because human beings are really strange. I mean, we already have, you know, plastic surgery, which is basically giving yourself artificial skin, through to implants in different parts of the body, just artificial hair. You know, humans are very, very strange. And there's already signs that there's a small movement of people who are obsessed with amputees because they like their prosthetics, and it's kind of creepy, but yeah, I mean, from knees through to feet, through to hands, the world's going to become very strange in the next 50 to 100 years. We're still at the very beginning of the exponential curve in this sort of technology, because building technology in the real world is much harder than building it in the binary world of ones and zeros and software. But it's still happening. I mean, if you take me, for example, amputees probably never even lived beyond 30 until maybe the last 300 years, because we just couldn't survive. And then amputees really haven't been able to run until the last 20 years or the last 40 years. And then if you look in the last 15 years, you have one inception point of a new technology. We introduced carbon fiber, and then all of a sudden you have people like myself who are literally on the verge of running faster than able-bodied human beings. I run faster than everyone in my country. I mean, that's, so, you know, we're really at the beginning of this curve of sort of going right up to being able to live forever.
Can you take us back to the running, your objective of running faster than Usain Bolt? What's his reaction to this been?
Well, I've got no idea because I haven't been in contact with him. But it's not about beating Usain Bolt. I don't want to beat Usain Bolt or detract from Usain Bolt. I'm not trying to compete with Usain Bolt. I'm trying to turn my disability into my ability through technology. And unless you're a double amputee, it's not really an option for you to run faster than Usain Bolt, unless you took a lot of steroids, which is, again, you're trying to sort of like interfere with the biological body, and it's not really that effective, and there's a whole lot of health risks, hence why steroids are banned. But if you're me and you can innovate, I think that's really beautiful, and it tells the tale of technology and human progress and overcoming certain challenges. So I'm not sure. I don't imagine Usain Bolt with his millions of dollars is going to care too much about what some kid with 2 fake legs does.
This all started, your venture into athletics started very recently, with the help of your local community in Nelson. Can you talk to us about that, your journey to this point?
Sure. Well, actually, it was the wider New Zealand community. And what happened was, so I was in my first year at university. I was incredibly depressed. Mum had died the year before. Girlfriend had broke up with me, told me that I was going to amount to anything, which was a fair statement at the time. I ended up drink driving one night, reversed out of a driveway, crashed into a friend's car, and got down the road and went off a bank in my truck. No one was hurt, fortunately, and no charges came with it or anything, so I was very fortunate in that sense, but it was an immediate wake-up call. The next day I went back to my university dorm room and got out a whole lot of sheets of paper. I wrote success in the middle, and then I conducted a very detailed analysis about, in 3 years, what could I do to add value to the world, and then of that value, what could I capture a percentage of to go on and do other things. Now, running was the obvious choice in the sense that in 3 years, sure, I'm competing against guys that have been running for 8 years or so, and that they all run faster than able-bodied people in my home country. However, I thought that there was, out of all the options that I assessed, that was the chance that I could add the most amount of value in, and therefore capture a percentage of that value. And so, I needed these blades, because I had the standard walking prosthetics, which are really hard to run in. And I went home, after I decided, I went into the Paralympics head office and I said, in 3 years' time, I'm going to go to Rio and I'm going to win. What times am I going to have to run? What do I have to do? And they're like, look, you can't go from being a university student who drinks 4 nights a week, smokes weed, eats bad food, and just lives the lifestyle that you do, to being a professional athlete. That's not realistic. Maybe aim for Tokyo and we'd love to have you there. And I said, yeah, sure, whatever. Being the A-type personality that I am, I immediately went home, Googled how much do I have to pay for these blades. I thought I could borrow some money off Dad. That would cost $30,000. That's outside my university budget. One of my other options that I assessed was starting a company. And, I barely had enough money to pay for noodles and a few beers in the weekend. And so, that wasn't really an option because I had no capital. And then I had to sort of figure out how I had to get $30,000 worth of capital to run. And so what I did was I started reaching out to different people, and eventually I got in contact with this reporter, and the outcome was, in a few days he emailed me. He said, look, I'm coming down to Christchurch where I was studying. I'm bringing a cameraman with me. We're going to come down, we're going to put a video together to pitch to the New Zealand public, and we might be able to raise you maybe 10% of the 30,000 to get you these blades. So he comes down, he's in my university room, and he goes, well, how fast can you run now? I said, I haven't run in 6 years. He goes, okay, that's an issue. We're going to have to go out to the track. We're going to have to film you running. So we go out to the track. He films running. I run 50 meters and I throw up everywhere.
Oh my goodness.
And at that point, I'm laying on the ground. I'm thinking I'm dying. And I feel terrible because I feel like I've wasted this guy's time. I'm like, I'm such an embarrassment. And he gives me a hand up. And he goes, in 3 years' time, I think you're going to win. So I think this guy's nuts. And, at least I think he's as nuts as I am. Anyway, so we put this video together. I don't think anyone's going to buy into the fact that I could do it. But sure enough, we played the video, and then within 48 hours, I had $50,000 from the New Zealand public.
My goodness.
And I basically went on TV and said, if you give me the blades or the money for the blades, in 3 years I'll win. And then from that point out, I trained twice a day, gave up bad food, drinking, smoking cones, the whole lot, and just... It was almost immediate, a complete lifestyle change. And it was very difficult, and for the first 9 months of my training, it would take me about 50 minutes to just be able to walk in my blades, because if you imagine wearing a shoe that's a size too small made of carbon fibre, that's what it was like for me to wear my blades. And but then, sure enough, 3 years later, I get to Rio and I win.
Do you remember the name of the reporter?
Yeah, Phil Vine. Yeah, I'm still in touch.
You're still in touch?
Yeah, we're friends on Facebook.
It's incredible, isn't it, how just belief can change the course of a person's life.
Yeah, absolutely. It takes one person.
Just one, yes.
It takes one person, yeah.
To anybody listening, thinking of setting out on a journey like this, whether it's to become a famous scientist or an enormous dream where it's likely that most people around them are likely to say, the dream's too big, don't bother, go back home and, take up knitting, as it were.
Sure.
What would you say to them?
That's the reaction from most people, because most people project how they feel onto others. That's just the way it goes. And so if you're around people that are really successful, which I've had the opportunity to do, you'll know that they have an energy about them that's infectious. And they will always be encouraging. They'll ask questions that will, allow you to think about your dream and, what are you doing wrong? What are you going to do right? That will potentially allow you to succeed or fail, and they'll be really constructive in that, but they will never say you can't do that because in the past you've never done anything like that before. And so you have to be willing, and it usually comes from friends and family, which is really, really tough. And but you just can't take it to heart. And if you really believe in it, then you'll just end up doing it anyway. It's most important that your own internal dialogue, that you get control of that, and so when people start doubting you, you're confident in your own mind that you end up doing it anyway. And that'd be my biggest piece of advice, would be take control of your internal dialogue, which is how you talk to yourself, because that usually will get you through the hardships.
How do you cope with, or how have you coped with the pain of injury, the pain of getting used to the prosthetics? I mean, when we watch the Paralympics in Rio and the para-athletics now here in London, there's very little dialogue in the presentation of these events about the actual physical pain that people like you have to go through.
By the time I was in Rio, I wasn't in any pain whatsoever.
You weren't in pain?
No, most athletes aren't. Most athletes have very good prosthetics. They have very good whatever it is that they're using to adapt to whatever event, whether it's a wheelchair or whatever. We have the same pain that most athletes deal with. Athletes in the Olympics, all athletes are just in pain because you're putting your body through such rigorous training in whatever type of event that you do, whether it's running, whether it's kayaking, whether you're playing basketball. Athletes are just destroying their bodies basically, and so it's just the same sort of thing. And it just comes down to being intelligent with how you treat yourself, making sure that you go through all your recovery. And a lot of the things that make someone successful are the 1%ers, and that goes for business or sport or the arts or science. It's the 1%ers that make a big difference, and they add up to being sort of 15 to 20%. And so in sport, that's your stretching, your recovery, your nutrition, making sure that you get massages regularly, making sure you don't overtrain on injuries. And so if you can do all of that, because most athletes are A-type personalities, all we want to do is just go out and train regardless of having an injury. That's what I did this year. I came back from Rio, took a slight injury, and I just wanted to keep training, and that was a really big mistake. And then I'm in crutches for 4 months because I tried to run on a stress fracture for 2 weeks. So the only way to sort of deal with that pain is if you're injured, you just have to stop. And some people keep going and they do okay, but more often than it just leads to heartbreak.
Can you give us a quick summary of the para-athletics to date? What's been happening? Johnny last night?
Sure. So we're at the Para-Athletic World Championships here in London, and so there's been a number of events. We have Richard Whitehead, who's a double amputee above knee, and he won the 200 metres. He's a phenomenal guy. It's incredible when you watch these blade runners and they have no knees. They're running on these sort of poles for that start at their thighs down to a carbon fibre blade. And it's just absolutely fascinating. Johnny Peacock won the 100 metres in the race that I should have been in as well, and I should have naturally won that race. But the UK team, Britain, have absolutely dominated. We are in the homeland. There's no better country in the world that supports their para-athletic team, and it's been absolutely phenomenal. The crowds here have been insane. I can never hear myself think, so I'm speaking really loudly all the time down the camera, but it's been fascinating to watch. I truly believe that the Paralympics right now is in probably the best position as a sporting event, or it has the best opportunity in a sporting event, because we're right at the start of this exponential curve for new technologies in the human body, whereas you sort of are going to have the Olympics, which sort of has all these regulations that you can't bring in new technologies whatsoever to help human performance, and it's only going to be maybe 5 more Olympics, and the Olympics is going to look like sort of the Antiques Roadshow of sport, where the Paralympics will just be an entirely different event.
Mm-hmm. Johnny's event last night was the 100 metres, wasn't it?
It was.
So we've got the 200.
You're the 200 and 400 coming up.
You got the silver in the 100.
Sure.
You've got the gold in the 200 and 400. Who do you think are going to win the 200 and 400?
It'll be between Johannes Floors and Hunter Woodhall.
And when are those events?
200's today. 400's today, and it might even be on soon. And the 200 is on later in the week. Are
you going to be commentating on either of those?
Not today because I'm absolutely wrecked. I've had to have a day off. It's been a busy week. But I'm going to try and get there for the 200 if they allow me.
You're an entrepreneur as well as an athlete.
Well, I'm not an entrepreneur. I've just started investing as an angel. I couldn't think of anything worse right now than trying to be an entrepreneur because I have friends that are entrepreneurs and they seem to only get 3 to 4 hours sleep a night, which would not align well with performance enhancing abilities for an athlete. But I'm really interested in technology, obviously, because it plays such a critical role in my life to date, and so it's really important for me as I go through my career to provide support in the form of capital, or later on perhaps starting my own company to help facilitate the increase in innovation in technologies, whether it's in medical devices such as prosthetics or software, and I find it really fascinating, and they're sort of these eccentric thinkers who are both really easy to get along with in the sense that they work well in teams, but then they're also very arrogant and have a lot of self-belief in their ideas and the way that they view the world, which is usually very different and very contrarian to how other people view the world. So I'm involved in that ecosystem, but at the moment I'm not an entrepreneur.
Are you frightened of anything?
So I saw my mum die when I was 18, and she got cancer when I was 12, and from 12 through to 18 I would have been in the hospice at least once a year for a sustained period of time, where she came close to death, or I would be watching her go through radiation in the hospital and chemotherapy, and so I saw so many people right before they were about to die, and so many people live with regret. And it's frightening when you see someone who lives with regret. It's not something that you want to take, in your final moments on the planet. You don't want to be feeling any sort of regret whatsoever. So that's definitely something that I fear, and definitely something that motivates me.
You're a person who is very easy to speak to. People love you. In presenting the parathletics last night, you were speaking to everybody around you, having selfies taken. Out of everybody that you could meet in the world, who would you most like to meet, and what question would you like to ask?
Sure, so I've already met Richard Branson, and I had the fortune of having dinner with him, but again, it would be to have dinner with Richard Branson once again, meet him again. And I really want to talk to him about how he's branded himself. I'm really interested in how he set up Virgin as sort of like a holding company that licenses its branding to other entrepreneurs, and how he's mitigated that, because I don't think there's anyone like him on the planet. I don't think there's a better storyteller in the business ecosystem, and the way that he's done it is absolutely fascinating. And then behind that, there's a comedian named Joe Rogan who I'd just love to sit down with, and he has a podcast called The Joe Rogan Experience, which is just absolutely fascinating. But then perhaps Donald Trump as well, and ask him what goes through his mind. Just try and figure that guy out, But the world is full of incredible people. If there was one person that I could really, really meet again, it would be my mum, because I haven't seen her since I was 18, and I would love to ask her, how did she know that I would turn out like this? Because even on her deathbed, she said that I would eventually go to the Paralympics and win, even though at that age, I couldn't think of anything worse, because I never wanted to be associated with having a disability. And so it was really, really strange that she made these really sort of strong predictions that ended up coming true.
My goodness.
Yeah. And even when I can remember back to when I was around 7 or 8, watching TV by a fireplace, and she pretty much could pinpoint what I would be like in my 20s, into things like skydiving, adventure sports, sort of what I would do, and she always believed that I'd go on and accomplish sort of big things. And so I'd love to just sit down, because and at 18, I was drinking all the time. I'd been a drug dealer in my teens, selling weed to friends at school. There was no indication. I couldn't even get the benefit. I failed at getting the benefit or the dole or social, money from the government. There was no indication that I would be able to achieve anything in my life at 18 years old.
But she knew.
Yeah, so I would love to ask her why she thought that.
Is your dad with you?
He's not here in England,
Yes.
so yeah, but I mean, Dad and I are close, and he works around the world globally, and he's been an incredible father to have, and we clash heads like crazy. We argue all the time. I like to think of it as a good debate, and he certainly inspired my love of debating and thinking and everything like that. And he's an awesome guy. He is I used to hate him as a child, because he would just talk about how important it is to be organised. He would talk about the importance of eating healthy, the dangers of alcohol, and the importance of fitness. And even before this sort of like anti-sugar movement came and everything, like, he was well and truly on to just being a really healthy human being. He's like the ultimate life hacker. Like, he's been talking about sleep and the importance of sleep since I can remember. The guy should have his own podcast. I mean, he's a great guy.
Well, what does he do?
So he works. It's really hard to describe, but he works in the fruit industry. That he's involved. He's a GM, but he's involved in procurement. He's involved in creating new species of fruit, so like new types of kiwi fruit that are resistant to frost and whatever. And basically, he travels the world. He goes to different orchards. He helps Chilean producers of kiwi fruit get their fruit into China, as well as helping universities in China develop new types of kiwi fruit in their own country, through to a whole range of different things. He has his hands in a lot of pies, and he's also very, very hard-working. The guy works 16 hours, and he just loves fruit, loves the importance of fruit and healthy eating. And so, it's kind of hard to describe what he does.
You have an incredible ancestry as well.
Yes, I do. Even coming back to England and Ireland, my great-great-great-grandfather was the Lord Mayor of Manchester, and he was a radical, I guess, liberal at the time, and he didn't want to pay tax for his newspaper, and the Queen put him in jail, and the people of Manchester fell out with the Queen, and she was meant to open the town hall, and he came out of prison, and they had him open the town hall instead of the Queen. And so he's fascinating. And then I've had different colonels throughout different wars going back. And my grandfather was the mayor of Nelson. There's a lot of politicians who all seem to have this trait of enjoying arguing with people and having sort of this A-type personality. So I guess that's where it comes from.
So you've got go-getting DNA then?
I have got go-getting DNA, and it's, I'm blessed to have that.
Talking of politics, would you ever be interested in being a politician?
Well, I sort of hope that we have some sort of artificial, or we have some sort of AI that increases our democracy by providing much more analytical policies for the public to decide on at an individual level. So the nation would essentially make decisions together. It would stop people from being so apathetic towards politics. So basically we'd be able to navigate whatever interface we wanted to navigate on the future of our country at whatever time. So say we wanted to leave the EU, we would have referendums just sort of all the time. People would be more intelligent. There'd be a broader analysis, or a very deep analysis of the probability streams of the outcome of what would happen, deciding either way. So hopefully politics doesn't exist in the near future, because it's just a mess. But in saying that, if politics is still around, and which it probably will be, sadly, then yeah, for sure.
Would you like to be a transhumanist politician?
That would be tough because politicians and technology just do not go together. I mean, in New Zealand, we just had the politicians sort of deciding whether or not they should make Uber illegal. And they just did not get it. You could not explain to them the difference between an Uber and a taxi. And so I think trying to be a transhumanist politician would be the most impossible thing to do ever, because you're talking about people who believe in a system of doing things the way they've always been done, and the opposite of trying to build the future as fast as possible, which is sort of like transhumanism.
As a final point, a message to Usain Bolt from you.
Your body's outdated. That's what I would say. That would be it.
Okay, well, let's see how he reacts to that.
Yeah, we will. We will.
It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you, Liam.
Thank
Malone.
you very much for having me.
Thank you so much for your time, particularly as you're so busy with the para-athletics. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks.